Hello, hello, it's Trudy here, One Grounded Angel. This is the weekly angel card reading video for the week starting Monday the 4th of May through to the 10th of May 2020. So we have a full moon coming up this week on Thursday, and that is in the sign of Scorpio, which is a sign all about what's going on underneath. It is the sign of deep intuitive connection. It is the sign of sex, the sign of power, all these really intense things. Scorpio is not a once over lightly sign. It is a sign that goes deep underneath. So in a full moons are all about release. They're about reaching a culmination or a peak of some sort. So maybe you might find that you get some sort of resolution or some sort of prompt to let go of something in those areas I just discussed. Maybe if you've got power issues at the moment, or your control issues are being triggered by some situation, maybe this full moon could give you some deep insight as to what to do about that. It is a time for, as I said, it's a sign that's really intuitive. You might get some great sort of light bulb kind of moments coming through where Spirit is really giving you some really clear guidance that you're in a position to really integrate and understand. I could say a lot about Scorpio. It's my favorite sign because it's my sign. But yeah, let me just say it is a sign for, it doesn't hide. In fact, it brings up what's hidden. So it can bring a few shocks and a few things to the surface, but the reason things come to the surface is so that we can deal with them, as unpleasant as that may be sometimes. Okay, so we're shuffling now for Monday, starting with the 4th of May, release and surrender. So as I just mentioned, surrender is often associated with the full moon, but there's always a good time to surrender and to release, because we can't move into the next chapter if we're still trying to reread the old one. And I often describe to clients as like this push me, pull you energy, where you've got one hand reaching back into the past, into this old relationship, and you're trying to reach for the new one with this, and it just doesn't work, because you can't really be super invested if you're still trying to, rake over the past, or just, beat yourself up about regrets you have, anything like that. So maybe there's something you need to release in terms of an energetic connection, or an idea that you might have had about yourself. Or the idea of surrender is appropriate too, because I just spoke about control and power, very Scorpionic ideas, although certainly not confined to only Scorpios. The idea of surrender is a difficult one, because we often try to control our circumstances to feel safe. If you look at people who may be trying to control their bodies or their relationship, people who are quite controlling, manipulative, that sort of thing, it's often like a weapon, or not a weapon, but like a tool for them to feel safer. They're worried about being abandoned, so they try and control the person to keep them holding on. I'm not saying that's necessarily making it okay, because I know certainly control is not very pleasant, but I'm just trying to explain to you that the reasons people reach for control is because it makes them feel safe. And certainly if you have anxiety, there will be control stuff going on for you, although it will show up in different ways. So the idea of surrender is we are called to trust the universe, which is not an easy thing to do. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. And so this card often comes up if we're needing to surrender our worries, our fears, and just release that and swap it for trusting the universe. And when I talk about surrendering, it doesn't mean not playing your part. Everything that we create needs to be a co-creation with the universe. We need to play our part in bringing through what we want to bring through. We don't just put it in the order at the restaurant and wait for it to show up. But we need to be careful we're not holding on too tightly or trying to control the process too much. It's a difficult balance, and sometimes I find it really tricky to find that balance. But usually if I can sit in meditation and do some journaling, I can get some insights on whether I'm holding on too tightly or whether I'm not stepping up. So Tuesday's card here is moon cycles. The archangel depicted on this particular card is Archangel Haniel, who is, Haniel, I think it's pronounced. Whoops. She is associated with the moon, amongst other things. And this idea, I talked about how the full moon is coming this Thursday. A lot of astrologers believe that the energy builds in the 2 weeks leading up to the full moon and then starts to subside after that until we get to the next new moon. So that may mean that the energy is coming up now, even though the full moon hasn't happened quite yet. And that might be big for some of you, particularly if you have a lot of planets in Scorpio. Now, I'm not an astrologist, I'm not going to delve too deeply into that. We can all be affected by a full moon no matter what's going on in your chart. But if you're not feeling like you're being really triggered by the full moon, and you would know if you are, because you will be wired but tired and unable to sleep, you would be super emotional for no apparent reason. But if that doesn't speak to you, this idea of cycles is important. The idea that we are always in a state of flux. We're always moving, changing. We're not stationary. So our lives go through different seasons. Obviously the year goes through different seasons, and we need to try and channel that sometimes and remember that if we're trying to stay stationary, maybe we're getting in our own way. Trying to be open to those changes of seasons and to know that you can adapt and adjust is important here. So it might be you're entering a new cycle in your life. Maybe your kids are going away off to university or college or something like that. Maybe your relationship's entering a different phase. Maybe you're finishing a relationship. Maybe you're starting a new job. It could be anything like that. Whenever you're going through a cycle, that card can come up to reassure you that you can adapt to this and you will be okay. And even though you don't know what it's going to look like, you're being asked to trust the universe that you'll get through it. Wednesday's card, very appropriate here, blessings of abundance. I sometimes draw a couple of cards for myself if I'm struggling with things. I don't draw a card for myself every day. I use the cards I draw for you guys. But there was a particular situation that came up for me a couple of weeks ago where my work was really slowing down, and I was getting a little bit concerned about that given the economic climate we're in right now with the pandemic. And I got this card, and the card came out to assure me that I was going to be blessed with enough abundance. And sure enough, I don't know if it was the next day or the day after, but I started to get a lot more phone calls and inquiries about work, and it's been really steady ever since. So I think when we start to freak out about the lack, we start to put our focus on what we don't have, and it's very easy to do. I do it often, so I'm certainly not exempt from that. To try and remember that we do have enough is really important, because if we focus on what we do have, what is coming in, what we do have the capacity to control, and the universe is taking care of the rest. So just letting you know there is enough out there for you. Please don't buy into the idea I don't have enough. I'm going to go this card deck for Thursday. If you haven't seen these videos before, I use a different card deck for each day of the week. I know everybody has their own kind of system, but I just like to see the different themes emerge across different card decks. And when I say different themes, I actually mean the same themes, because often the same theme can show up in different cards. And sometimes just the different messages and how they kind of bounce off each other and are interrelated. I really like to see that. So that's just my preference. Thursday's card here is manifestation power. I spoke earlier about how we've got to try and find this balance between what is my role, what is the universe's role. And this card comes up for people who are perhaps feeling a little bit stuck, or perhaps not sure how to get from, not completely happy with where they are, wanting to get to that next stage and not sure how to get there. And this card is reminding you to step up and play your part. That you do have power, an important role to do that. And I'll read the message here. Use your spiritual gifts and natural abilities to attract your desired outcome. So the full moon's a really powerful time, and you might like to use that to, because I mentioned before that it can be about getting some insights because of Scorpio's influence. You might like to use this time to ask the universe through journaling, meditation, what do I need to do to make this happen? I want this situation, I want to manifest whatever it is. What do I need to do? Remember that the universe responds to action. So what you want to do is be really focused. And we had the intention card last Saturday, and I talked a lot about how we need to be really focused. We can't scatter our energy by running around trying to do everything at once. We know multitasking doesn't work. Research proves that. So we need to be focused. And if you have the goal already, now what you need to do is figure out, what do I need to do? Because once you start, the universe is going to rush in and help you. But it needs an anchor point, and that's why scattering your focus doesn't work so well. So again, zero in on your goal, figure out what you need to do. What is in your power to do? Sometimes our goals are so big that we feel paralyzed and that by indecision, by the magnitude of it. I can't do this, and so we don't do anything at all, and that's just so counterintuitive. And so if we break it up into steps, that can help. If we just look at what actually can I change, if there was just one thing I could change to get me that tiny bit closer to the goal today, what would I do? And maybe that's the thing you do, looking at it that way. It's about attraction here, that law of attraction stuff. We need to be moving in the right direction to attract help from the universe to get there, to attract that universal flow of energy. And that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Sometimes people freak out because they start working towards a goal and then all these hurdles come up and they think, oh, I must be on the wrong track. Doesn't mean you're on the wrong track. Often fear comes up because you are on the right track. You're being provoked because it's scary and your ego is freaking out because it's not in control anymore, and because you're moving towards something that it won't have control over you, and that's going to be, it means there are risks. The ego wants to keep you safe. So don't be put off. I know that sounds easier said than done. Don't be put off if things are hard when you're working towards a goal. It doesn't mean you've got it wrong. It just means you've got more work to do. And sometimes you need to look at those hurdles and say, is there something in here I need to learn? Maybe I'm trying to push too much on something instead of finding a more creative solution to this problem. So they're just empowering you with this card to play your part, to get started on your goals. So it's a good message, very empowering, as I said. Let's go to Friday now. These are some big messages we're having this week already. Oh gosh, maybe this card deck is not for me. I'm really struggling with it. Oh no, thank you universe. Leadership, this is Friday's card. Oh, I love this color on it. It's deep purple or maroon, I don't know what you call it, but the card can do two things. If you are facing a specific situation that involves you stepping up, you're being called to take a leadership role, then literally this would be empowering you to go for that. Could be in your work, for example. It could be in some sort of volunteer organization you're involved with. Could be within your family. It doesn't mean leadership as in bossing people around and telling them what to do. And I don't have a problem with the word bossy. I know it's much maligned, but I don't have a problem with it. What I am saying is it's not about controlling people to get them to do what you want to do. It's not about, spoon feeding people. It's about playing your part to be the leader. And often the best way to be a leader is by working on your own stuff, cleaning up your own backyard, being a role model in that sense. And anyone watching this who is on a spiritual journey, who's been going through a lot of healing work, you will know. People will start to say to you when you're on that, what are you doing differently? Have you done something with your hair? Your skin looks, what are you using? They think you look different, but it's not that you look different. It's because the energy around you is changing. People can see there's something different. They can't quite put their finger on it. You're not reacting to situations in the way you used to. Then people suddenly start to ask you, what's going on? What are you doing? Can I drink that too? Or can I take that medicine too? And it's not really easy to break down, unfortunately, but it's just about the energy that is changing around you, and that's really inspiring to people. It inspires them to work on their own stuff as well. So that's why that saying goes, the work you do on yourself is the work you do on the world. And so if you are on a spiritual journey and people are asking you questions, by all means share if you want to, but don't feel compelled to. And secondly, if you do share it, don't do it in a kind of religious person who wants to convert you type way, because what you're going through is not going to be the same for everybody, and your approach to working through it is not going to be right for everybody. So try not to be too zealous about it, would be my advice. But then everybody has their own take on this. Secondly, I would say, if it's not about a specific leadership situation, I always take this card as being, how can I be a better leader to myself? Which I know sounds totally weird, but stay with me. What I mean is, if I'm struggling, often I want to look around for a grown-up to fix it because I don't know what to do. And sometimes the message is, I'm the grown-up. I need to be the grown-up here. So how can I be the leader that I would seek out? What if my best friend was asking me for advice, what would I tell them? And so that's often how you can be a leader to yourself. What would be the thing that I would want to see a leader doing right now if they were in this situation? And often that's well, for me personally, that's helpful in trying to figure out my way through. I keep coming back to this idea of the torch here, and I spoke before about being a role model and how that can lead people through situations by working on our own stuff. You're not doing it to influence people, you're not doing it to try and get them on board with what you're doing. You're just doing it because that makes the world better. If you're less triggered by what's going on in the world, if you're less if you're working for your healing, then you're not going to be putting your stuff on other people as easily. You're not going to be taking out your emotions on other people, that sort of thing. You're going to have healthier relationships. So it is also not just helping people by showing them a different way to live, but it's also changing what you're bringing into different interactions, changing the energy around you, so that you're holding the torch really for how people can live differently, I guess, for how people can have a different influence, indirect influence, not an influence in terms of what you want people to do, but just an influence on how people might respond to situations. I've gone off on a tangent with that, so it's definitely right to move on to the Saturday card, which is uplift your thoughts. I often talk about we need to focus on the donut and not the hole. It's very easy because we're trained or sort of conditioned to look for the problem so we can keep ourselves safe by fixing it. What's wrong with this situation? What do I need to fix? If I fix it, then there's not a problem and I'm safe. It's a bit like, an evolutionary kind of ways of thinking. The caveman idea of you always had to be on guard for a threat because you were so vulnerable as human beings. And some of that, I think, is still with us in our ego, looking for the problem to be on guard against the threat, to keep ourselves safe so we can stamp that out right away. And the problem is that negativity bias can really work against you because you keep seeing what's wrong instead of seeing what's right. And as we know from the law of attraction, what we focus our thoughts on the majority of the time, I'm not saying it's possible to have no negative thoughts because we're human, but what your focus goes on the majority of the time is what you're going to start to attract. So instead of looking at what's not in your bank account, looking at what is and being thankful that you have that, particularly in a time like this when so many people around us are really struggling. If you are still drawing an income, be thankful for that, look at that and focus on that as a blessing instead of looking at, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. There's lots of other blessings in your life too. I know I use that in an abundance sort of framework, but there are lots of blessings in terms of, okay, lots of us can't really go out and do things that we used to do at the moment, but there are lots of things we can do. We have the opportunity to sit in front of the TV and not feel like we're being lazy, and know that that's actually doing some good for the community for the first time in history. Being slovenly is good for us. Well, obviously you don't want to do it too much because it starts to take a toll on your physical health, but there are lots of blessings in the situation we're in, even though it's not ideal, and I'm certainly not saying it's a fantastic place to be. There are still challenges, but there are still blessings within it, and looking at that can be, I think it's very helpful. In that card, oops, I'll just drop the next card deck, but I'm trying to focus on the card before. It's a good example of me being focused on the past instead of reaching for the next. So the card is just asking you to uplift your thoughts and just notice where they're going and try and take charge a little more. I'm not saying try and cancel out negative thoughts. I don't think that's realistic nor helpful, but just be aware of where your thoughts are straying to. Are you spending too much time looking at what's wrong instead of focusing on the things that you do have? Right, I've now officially moved on to Sunday. Divine passion, love, love, love the energy of this. It is intense, very scorpionic again. This particular goddess is associated with the Hawaiian Islands, and so no surprises, there's a volcano there. That fiery energy, super important at a time like this when we're, we've got an opportunity to transform, to rebuild a better life. We are not trying to go back to normal after the lockdown finishes. We are trying to create a better normal because the old normal really wasn't working for a lot of us, particularly not for society's most vulnerable people. And so let's start getting more passionate about the opportunity we have here to create something better. And I'm not saying that's easy, and I'm not saying you don't have a right to grieve for what we've lost, but trying to get really passionate about creating something better. A lot of the people I work with, or at least maybe not right now, but a lot of people I have worked with in the past in terms of my clients, are coming to me because they're in jobs that they really, really strongly dislike, maybe even hate, and they're trying to convince themselves that it's okay to stay. They get to a point where they can't convince themselves anymore because they're just so numb. They are so feeling so stuck that they have to do something, but they're terrified of making the change. And even if I ask them, what do you actually want? What are you passionate about? They can't even, they're so disconnected, they can't even go to what sets them on fire in a positive way. And so this card is asking you to come back to what you are passionate about. Now that we're in this holding pattern, that is a good time to start thinking about that. And if you don't know, please don't be distressed. I know it's really hard to think about if you're so conditioned to be numb, to be an autopilot, to go through the motions, to keep everybody else happy. It can be really freaking hard to change your focus suddenly to go, what actually sets me alight? What is it I love to do? You don't have to change your life completely. This could just be an invitation to bring through a hobby that you used to really love. So you have a thing that's not just about you serving everybody else and looking after everybody else, particularly if you're a mum. Something that you really are passionate about. Doesn't mean you have to be good at it, and it doesn't mean you have to be, you have to find it easy. In fact, it's probably better if you don't. So it could be in a larger sense talking about the life that we create after this, what you'll be passionate about creating and starting to think about that, or it could be about bringing a bit more passion into your life even now, looking at hobbies and things you can do that you really enjoy. So we have, is that enough days? Yes, it is. I can count to 7. A lot of strong cards tying into this lunar energy coming through on Thursday, but as I said, that doesn't mean it's confined to just Thursday because the energy builds and starts to ease a little. We have messages about releasing. What is it we need to let go of? And perhaps it is this fiery energy around leadership, around passion, I think, and about manifestation is all very much interwoven with this idea of them sort of stoking the fires within us to get going and get creating what we want to do. And if you don't know, another way to think about it is, if I'm on my deathbed, what is the thing I'm going to regret not having done? So I know that sounds a bit bleak, that may not appeal to all of you, but I personally have found that helpful in the past. And definitely about taking control of our thoughts. This idea around blessings and abundance is pretty strong here as well. The release stuff and the cycles is all very appropriate to what we're going through as well in terms of this transition and transformation that we're going into. So that's it for the week. Thanks very much for watching. If this card reading has been too general for you, you want to get a little bit more tailored messaging coming through, then you're best to book a personal reading with me, which you can, all my work's done over Zoom. So I'm not affected by what's happened in terms of the pandemic. I was not doing face-to-face readings anyway, because I don't think very like I live in a town where I have actually had one client once in my town that worked with me, but everybody else is somewhere else. So I'm very adept at working across different time zones, different currencies. We can make it work. So reach out via my website, www.onegroundedangel.com. There is a bookings form there. And even if you're not 100% sure, there's information on that website that can help you, give you a bit more information about what makes me different to other card readers, to other energy healers, what I bring through in my sessions. And you can always just fill out the form and say, I want more information, and then we can have a bit of a conversation electronically about that. And as I mentioned, I also do energy healing work for those people who already know what's going on. They already know what they want to work on. They're just really stuck and they don't know how to get through it. So my energy healing work is about clearing the blocks that are getting in your way. Those are things like limiting beliefs that are in your subconscious that are playing out, helping you attract things you don't want. They are things like fears, traumas, which can be anything from fears of abandonment, fears of failure, all that sort of stuff I can clear with you in your energy healing. So where those are showing up in your energy, to clear those, so you've got capacity to move forward in a different direction instead of being jerked around in all different directions by things that you don't even want, you don't need, and that are keeping you stuck. And then I also do, as part of that process, we also bring in some healing energy to help you come more into alignment with what you do want. to help you move forward in a different direction. So that's it from me. Each card is on Instagram as always, each day at One Grounded Angel is my Instagram channel. And I also have a Facebook page called One Grounded Angel, and sometimes I post articles on there that may be relevant to what we're talking about. Thanks everybody, have a terrific week.